and so I think I came up, trained at night. Then you, it was you were on a crazy schedule. It was like I trained at night, then you worked all night.
Yeah.
Then we were going to train in the morning.
Yeah.
And then you like texted me or called me. I can't remember what the technology was at the time. And we're like, hey, I just got called out for the SWAT team.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go ahead and start rolling or sparring or whatever. You know, so and so's at the gym, and I'll get there when I get there.
Mm-hmm.
So then you showed up after we had trained some, and then you trained with us some. We rolled. We did some more sparring. Then we go to this coffee shop and we took a break for a couple hours. Then we drove south. I remember Bill Hill. We went to his place and trained again. So at this time, I don't know. I think you were running on like 36 hours with no sleep, and I had driven up, so I was running. Who knows how much I slept?
Right.
And literally like living on coffee.
Sure.
You were cutting to 185 for a fight, from what I remember. And in case anyone watching can't tell, you at 185 look like skin and bones. Like 185 is rough for you.
It is tough.
So you were literally living on coffee and something
it's a hard
else.
weight to me.
And weight cuts weren't quite the science back then. They were just like, don't eat,
don't
and
eat.
drink caffeine, and I think you'll get skinny.
And dehydrate yourself.
Dehydrate yourself, because that's good for performance.
And it was this wrestling base cutting at that time.
But I remember when we were sitting there drinking coffee on the break, if you want to call it that, between training, and I remember like that schedule to a lot of people would sound very stressful, right?
Sure.
But you didn't present as stressed, right? And I remember talking with you about it a little bit. We were just kind of kicked back in a booth talking about it, and you were like, man, when I have a bunch of stuff going on, I just ride the wave. Like I'm just in it, you know. And I used that for a lot of those kinds of times in my life when I was just running hot, you know, little sleep, many things going on. One of the things with being a generalist is you've always got 100 irons in the fire, and you're never paying enough attention to any of them. All those could be a full-time job, and you're trying to be good at them. And then, but it's a feeling. Here's how I'm going to tie it to jiu-jitsu, and I think you'll agree. To me, it's a feeling of detachment. Like, I'm here, and I'm just doing these arts. I'm pursuing whatever it is. And the analogy of riding the wave is like if you look back and you're scared of all the stuff you've put on your plate, if you freeze up and go, how am I going to get all this done? That is never productive. That's never productive. Only thing you can do is just stay there in the moment, you know. And I think maybe when we were talking about it, it's like, what's next? The next thing is we finish our coffee and we drive south. When we get to Bill's place, what's next? We do some Greco. And then we do that round. We do the 15-second increment of that round. I'm trying to get the underhook. If I get thrown, which I did many times, I try to do the break fall right.
Try to land properly.
That's my job in the moment. That's my job right now.
For sure.
And that detachment, and while it not so detached that you're not still aware of what you're going after, but that really worked for me, man, and made anxiety. You don't need to add any anxiety on top of any of the stuff.
No, you got it already.
You've got enough already.
You got it already.
Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about kind of your mental approach and where it's come from, and how you see those types of things, and if you vibe with what I just said.
Yeah, man, for sure. A lot of that kind of stuff came from my upbringing. I just constantly heard just keep on keeping on. My grandmothers on both sides of the family were just tough old ladies. And my paternal grandmother's still alive. She's 99.
Wow.
Outlived 2 husbands. My dad's dad died when they were kids, medical complications, and this is like in the 60s, 50s, 60s. So she's raising 2 boys. Without any real social network back at that time. There really was no social services. So she had to make do, and they're living on a farm and all that. So she made do, you know, and got through it. But her thing was always, you just keep on keeping on. You can't let your feet stop moving.
Yeah.
You know, because nothing stops.
Yeah.
You know, there is no true resting place.
Right.
So you got to keep moving and when things are going, you just got to keep going with it. Just keep saying yes. Keep saying yes. Keep taking the next opportunity, because if those opportunities stop, things get difficult.
Right.
And my grandmother on the other side of the family, they were Jewish German. You know, my mom's maiden name is Mensch. You know, and there's a funny story about that. I just remembered a few days ago, I was standing in the kitchen. I was like, that bastard. I just remembered a slur that a guy had thrown at me when I was a little kid, you know, about that name. But so she came over, her and my mother's dad, they came over. Well, my mom's dad ended up dying when she was about 7 from tuberculosis. And then my grandmother, because of the exposure back in that time, that day, was placed in a sanatorium. So out in the mountains of Western Maryland, and so my mom was raised basically by family members, kind of shuttled around, her and her siblings, from the time that she was about 7 until she was 16 when they released my grandmother, because they were like, oh, okay, well, it's been 10 years and you're not dead, so we probably don't have it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, that is rough.
Back in the day, right? So she was a tough old lady, you know, and so it was a little spitfire, you know, and so she very much raised me as well to, like, tough times come, tough times don't last, you know, and so you just keep on keeping on. You know, you never ever stop moving, and that was very much her mentality as well. So it's kind of raised in that environment of always keep moving, always look for the next thing, you know, and as much as possible bring others with you. You know, don't just serve yourself. And so, and then that kind of coupled with, I read a couple books. One was Mental Toughness for Sport, Dr. James Lauer. It's a really good book, and probably at that time, I was probably reading that book almost daily. There's passages from that book, kind of like a biblical study every day, you know, because he very much was, you have to constantly reframe things. So rather than looking at it like, this sucks, I'm so sore right now, you look at it like, man, my training's working.
That's right.
I'm a little banged up, man. I think this stuff's working.
That's right.
You know, like this new program's working, or you know, he was the first guy that I remember to frame it as, I get to go roll.
Yeah.
I don't have to go roll.
Right.
Like that. Like we're driving down to Bill's or wherever to do some Greco, and like I get to do some Greco. Like this isn't something a lot of people get to do.
That's right.
There's a lot of people that give anything to do this right now. Can't ever forget that. So, you know, I really, from those formative years, always, and I remember, you know, strangely enough, I remember my paternal grandmother saying, like, you don't have to do anything, you get to do stuff. You know, I remember her saying that, like when I was a little kid. I remember, you know, complaining about something, you know, and she had like soybeans, and she always had like the, you know, the Liberty Garden concept thing, and she had grown up in that time, you know, and so she had always had a garden, you know, even like we're living on a farm, she's living on a farm, there's still the family garden, you know, and I remember out there in her garden with her, and, you know, picking stuff, and, you know, and of course, you know, she's gonna pick up on me, you know, pouting or whatever, you know, and I remember just having a moment of, you know, well, I have to do this, I can't go play with my cars or whatever I wanted to do, you know, and I remember her looking at me going, well, you get to do it.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people don't have food that they can just readily access or just come out to their garden and pick.
Yeah.
So you get to come out here and pick what we're gonna eat for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
You get to.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
I love that. And another thought that I've had, that Eric and I have talked about before, is so on the other side of reframing, so reframing things to the positive, any positive that you have, you can always find something negative if you want to.
Sure.
Right? So the power is in here.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Always.
you could be sitting somewhere by a nice swimming pool and they're bringing out shrimp or whatever, and you can bitch about the beer not being cold enough.
Yeah.
Right? You can bitch about your
People
knee.
do.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
We're adaptable.
Are you?
We're adaptable, right?
How high are you right
No,
now,
you're the
bro?
same.
There's
Right?
not
Yeah,
enough
like-
towels in this beautiful hotel room. Like
Yeah.
you can always reframe negatively because
Sure.
the power's in your mind, you know.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think we were having this conversation on the lake a couple of years ago. We were out at the lake, and
When
we
you
were,
dump the canoe over?
there was a kayak.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
And
I'm
so it's called an
sorry.
Eskimo roll.
Yeah.
It's supposed to
I
happen.
was practicing.
It's practicing.
I
It's
was a
supposed to
failure.
happen.
I was
With his
exposing myself
cowboy
to
hat on.
I like it.
I was exposing
completely
myself to
dry
failure.
New jeans.
I like
It was
it.
the best thing
I
I've
like
seen in
it.
a long time.
How else you gonna learn if you don't do it?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. So
make it happen.
I was trying to mature myself through learning
Hardships.
process. Is what I was
Yes.
doing.
Ruining your hat.
So, and
Instead, you thought of it's giving a character.
yeah, and I was trying to help you learn, but I guess
Yeah.
you didn't learn.
Yeah,
I learned
you missed the
not-
whole lesson. You missed the whole lesson.
There's one lesson I got really well though. When you're going fast, the
Don't
way
stick
to
the
not
bottom.
stop is to stick one side out.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's how you start the roll.
Yeah.
That's how you start.
Also, don't wear your most expensive knife when you're out there.
Yeah,
because that's a
don't-
bad way to lose it.
Yeah, don't lose a good knife.
So like, we were saying when we were out there at the lake, we were sitting on the side of the lake. I think we probably had a couple beers. We were fishing with the kayak, and we were like, you know, what does somebody who's a multi-millionaire who's rented out an island and is having some food and some beers and throwing a fishing line in the ocean or maybe off their yacht or whatever, what do they really have available to them right now that we don't? Like, we're
Sure.
relaxing in the sun with our friends. They may not have friends, right? Like, we're like childhood friends. Like, so we just shoot the shit together and try to fish a little. We're out here in the sun. We got food. We're in a safe country. We start listing off all these things. You could always take, if you have that inclination, you could complain about your weekend at the lake because you didn't catch any fish because your friend dumped you in the kayak. You know,
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I would never do that on purpose. But,
Yeah.
And
Yeah, right.
but you can complain about any part of that you want. It's too
Right.
hot. It's whatever. But man, there's basically nothing that multimillionaire has available to him in that moment that we know.
It's just degrees of things.
Yeah.
At a certain point, once you,
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure there is a level of poverty or
For sure.
lack of things
sure.
that
But
does.
it's not us
really-
at that moment.
It's not, and it's
Yeah.
not most of at least our country.
Yeah, most of us.
No.
Anything
Even the most
more than
poor,
that,
even the most poor people in America are doing okay.
Yeah.
You know?
satellite TV and pizza.
Yeah,
And
doing okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, they have access to good water,
Mm-hmm.
and medical care if they needed it, that's something,
I try to look at my injuries like that too. Like I try to tell myself again, like I'm in my early 40s now, and I'm like, try to appreciate what doesn't hurt. Right?
Yeah.
Try to appreciate the
Sure.
health you have right now,
Yeah.
because in 20 years you're going to be 63.
Right.
You think you're going to be like a fountain of youth at 63?
Yeah, right.
Of course not.
Yeah, yeah.
So appreciate
Yeah.
what you can still do. Like I still have this capability, and it feels great to be able to move and like you said, I can roll.
The act
If
of
I
being
can
alive.
roll, yeah, I'm
The
here.
act of being alive is we overlook it.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a
gift,
gift.
man. We forget it so much, and that's the thing. I even on the mental side of it, the mental toughness training for sport book, he talks a lot in there about that kind of stuff. Like, get up and move. Get up and move when you're hurt, when you're down. Get up and move. Force
Yeah.
yourself to get up and move, because movement is life.
Yeah.
And so by starting to move, you get all kinds of good stuff happening. And we know, like, the lymphatic system, all that stuff, it's dependent upon movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've got to get up and move, and you will change your mood just by moving. And then you can begin that self-talk of just like, hey man, the attitude of gratitude, whatever you want to call it, just let me think of 3 things that I'm thankful for right now.
Yep.
Like 3 things that, my life would be altered to the nth degree negative if I didn't have these things right now.
Yep.
What am I thankful for? And you just start running that down. And for me, that was always what kept me going, and I also kind of had a mantra in my head. I always had like this, things in motion stay in motion. I just would constantly say that to myself, like, things in motion stay in motion. So let's just get up. I'm tired. you know, it's been a 36 or a 48-hour day. I'm tired. I'm hurting everywhere. You know, like I want to call an ambulance and take me to the bathroom. You know, like I don't even want to get up and walk. But let's just get up, man. Things in motion will stay in motion. So let me get moving, and let me think of a couple things I'm thankful for. And you know, we begin this wave of just gratitude, this wave of just mental positivity. You know, the positive mental attitude is so important. You know. And I would just start that wave, and then it would take on a life of its own.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it really does. And there's a book by Emmett Fox called I think it was the 7-Day Mental Fast is what he called it.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it's a fast that never ends. You know, it's kind of like what was that lamb's tooth, or what was that? Lamb chop. Remember the little kids?
Cartoon?
Yeah, you might have missed out on it. You might have been. You probably missed out on Barney and all that stuff with kids. But
Well, my kids are a little older than Shannon, Barney a little.
yeah, Barney a little. Yeah, but
Yeah.
still.
I'm glad I missed that.
You missed out on that stuff.
Please don't get the song in my head.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it to you.
Okay.
But the lamb chop, you know, they had like it was like the song that never ends, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like one of those things where you get like this positive mental attitude. You get like this thing going, and it takes on a life of its own, and it's like one of those songs where it just does not end.
Yeah.
You know. But the mental fast is like basically the fast that never ends, because you're never gonna have. So the whole premise is you want to go 7 days without a negative thought.
Yeah.
Right. So 7 days without thinking a bad thought. Now that doesn't mean like looking out the window and going, oh man, the weather's bad today. Like he doesn't mean that, but like staying away from gossip, staying away from like basically like what are the 7 deadly sins, you know, like a lying tongue that spreads division among the brothers, you know, and that kind of thing, and envy and all that stuff. So you want to stay away from those thoughts that tear you down, that allow kind of that cascade of other negative things to happen, where you're going to be put into a position where you might not be able to dig yourself out.
Right.
And so the thing is, it's cool about it is the goal was 7 days, and you're supposed to keep a journal. And I've probably got like 500 journals, right? Because I've never made 7 days.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So but the thing is, as soon as you have that moment where that thought gets in there and it takes on a life, where it begins that
Cascade.
Yeah. Got to start over.
Got it.
Right? That's the day you ended the fast.
Yeah.
Right? You gave in and had that piece of chocolate cake,
Nice.
you know? And so now you got to start over. Don't beat yourself up. Just go, okay, cool, man. I made 4 days.
Right.
This time I made 2 days. You know, like, oh man, it's a rough time, right? You know, my dad's dying. I got all this stuff going on. I made 3 hours.
Yeah.
No problem, man. Let's start over. Let's keep going, though.
You know, something I think is really interesting about that you just made me think of is doing that exercise, working on that. Because several of the things you just mentioned, I have participated in some way over the years. The gratitude thing I really like. The thing that you just mentioned, it may have been you that put it on social media, something about try to go X amount of time without complaining.
Yeah.
Or without, when you see the stickers, no whining, whatever, that's what it means, you know.
Right.
And so when you get into the discipline of, or the exercise of, looking at your thoughts and those cascades that come after it, you can start to recognize the difference between what is actually happening, what is actually the case,
Right.
and what is my mental deformation of these things. For example, like I have had times where I'm like, I notice that kind of thought line stuff, and then I realize, like, I've been doing this for 30 minutes and I haven't even realized it. Like, I've been ruminating on this for 30 minutes. And this whole narrative that I've just built up for 30 minutes, how much of that is even true? And how much of that is literally just that I was falling down that waterfall, and I didn't stop myself and say, the fast is over, gotta start over again. I've literally just been getting tangled up in this internal narrative and it's all me.
Right.
Or maybe it's mostly me, 100% me, who knows exactly, but I'm completely unclear. I'm clouding up my ability to perceive what's really going on in this relationship, in this work situation, in this whatever, you know. It could be something somebody said, it could be some action that they're
Right.
doing, it could be some thing that you're anticipating and being anxious about. What percentage of this is actually just my mental toil?
Right.
You know, and this almost sounds Buddhistic, you know, we could kind of get
Yeah.
into kind of some of the Zen type of stuff, you know. That how much of this is just going on here?
Right.
And how much is really facts that's actually the case?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Kind of like that Byron Katie, the
Yeah.
work, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like, is it
Mhm.
true?
Mhm.
How do I know it's true?
Right.
You know, who would I be without this thought?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then how do I reframe it
Mhm.
into something different? And yeah, it's like that. Like I've had entire conversations in my head
Mm-hmm.
that never occurred in
That's
real
right.
life.
That's right.
You know, like I've had entire, like, worked myself up into like a challenge match.
Yep,
You know, like,
absolutely.
like I'm gonna call them out.
Right,
You know,
right.
if I walk in and I see them,
Yeah.
we're addressing this. Like,
Because they said all that stuff.
yeah,
But they
because
didn't
in my
say
head,
all that
but
stuff.
they never said it. Like
That's
it
right.
never happened.
Yeah.
I just extrapolated and went way off into the deep end.
Mhm.
And then you look back on it, and you go, how much time did I lose
Mhm.
on that thought process that I could have been using on something else, like creating something,
Yeah.
thinking of something. Like, you know, I'm not a writer or anything like that, but, you know, I have thoughts, you know, like how I could have created an entire curriculum
Mhm.
for teaching, you know, kids at risk or, you know, adults with special needs. I could have created so many things to give back
Yeah.
to my community to make everybody safer. Instead, I'm having this, you know,
Imaginary.
Hatfield and McCoy feud in my head with some
Yeah.
dude that doesn't even know we're at war.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
like, you know, like he said something in passing that he might not have even meant,
Yep.
you know, to go that way.
Yep.
You know, he might not have meant it
Or you
at
just
all.
misinterpreted it.
That's
maybe
what
as
I mean,
well.
yeah. Like I just took it completely the wrong way,
Mhm.
and now we're getting it.
Yep.
You know, like we're gonna get it
That's
on,
right.
bro. You just don't know. You know, like it's gonna be a championship fight, man. You know, and then you know, and then I've been completely wrong, and then it's like you said, though. You know, we got to do that self audit. You know, is this true? You know, and then after we ask ourselves, is it true? Like, well, how do I know it's true?
Mhm.
Like, I think it's true,
Mhm.
but I don't know it's true. Like, how do I actually know this to be true? You know, have I done the work of finding that out? And if it's not worth doing the work, then why am I getting all spun up?
Yeah.
You know, if it's not even worth the effort of picking up the phone,
Mhm.
you know, because texts will get just as twisted.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, if it's not even worth the effort of picking up the phone or finding that person, then why am I getting like
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
How do I really know? You know, it's like, man, those internal battles.
For sure.
You know,
For sure.
and then we lose time. And
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Time's your most precious
you
resource.
don't have time, man.
You
You
don't
can't
have time.
borrow it. You can't loan it.
No.
You got it. You've got. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no. It's like the Rollins thing, right? There's no
Yeah.
downtime. There's no spare time. There's just time.
Yep.
And then what you do with it, it's up to you.
And you just wasted some of your precious life time.
Yeah.
Doing-
On your feud.
Yeah, on your
But
one
sometimes
man
it feels
feud.
good.
Yeah,
Sometimes
does.
it feels good. I'm like, I'm gonna kill this guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, we're gonna be like puppets fighting. You know? Just like getting after it. You know, we don't even know why we're fighting. You
Yeah,
know?
You can always win in your head.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I'm the most righteous dude in the room in my
Right,
head.
right.
You know, I'm the only one here that really has a reason to be upset.
I got the Hicks and Gracie record in my head. I'm 400-0.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing too. And that's another thing too. It's like I'm always the most righteous dude
Yeah.
in my head.
Right.
You know, like I'm the only one that should be offended right now, or I'm the only one that, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Well, since we all have that tendency, then that's an unhealthy way to be going about. If we have to
Sure.
interact with one another and have relationships,
yeah, now we're walking around carrying that
Yeah.
filter right there.
you think you're always that
I'm
guy,
seeing
I
that
think I'm always
lens.
that guy.
Yeah, it's like I got that lens in front of me, and that's how I'm seeing everybody else.
Mhm.
I gotta reset that somehow or another, and again, coming back to like peeling those layers off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like sometimes when you're getting in somebody's face and training, kicking them in the butt or whatever, to push them a little further, so that they can have that, adaption or whatever it is that the term would be for them changing.
Mhm.
You're trying to kick them in the butt, and you got to get through to them. Like, what voice are you really hearing right now? You know, like, what are you hearing right now? This is me talking to you. You know, this is not your dad or your estranged whatever. This is not whatever other filter you're using right now. You know, this is not all those voices. This is the voice of the person that wants the very best for you.
Right.
You know, like, listen to me. You know what I mean? It's almost like somebody coming out of like an accident or something where you're like, hey man, look at me, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like sometimes we need that person in our life to get us out of our head, to peel those filters off so we can see things correctly, and or sometimes it's up to us to figure it out. Like we have to do that inner work of, is this real? Is this true? You know, like what is going on right now? You know, why am
So
I
much of
stacked
it
up?
is just protecting your ego, really.
Yeah, for sure. You know, ego is the most important asset some of us have. You know, it was for me, still is. You know, I'm not even gonna lie. You know, it still is. You know,
You can't make it go away, but
no,
you can,
man.
I think you can, by training that way, you can see it more easily when it's happening too, and address it faster.
Yeah, I think we tend to all be. I know, you know, I you know, people tell me like, you know, fairly narcissistic and self-absorbed, and you know, and the ADD thing. You know, I'm hyper-focused. You know, I just, it's part of it. You know, just OCD almost. You know, not to make light of people who have an actual condition, but that focus, that hyper-focus on whatever it is I'm doing, and that's all that matters. And yeah. You know, it makes me good at some things. It makes me good at what I do. If I'm interested in it, I'm good at it. You know, but it's
trade-offs.
It's trade-offs, man. It's hell for people around me.
Yeah.
You know, and I get it.
I saw a quote by Danaher. He said, "Anyone who does jujitsu for an extended period of time has some bit of madness in them."
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I do think that it attracts some obsessiveness.
Yeah, it does.
Because
you're
you're
get good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's true in any discipline.
Yeah. I have friends that are grandmaster level shooters, GM level shooters, and USPSA. And yeah, it's.
If you got to pay attention to detail that much, and you don't have some obsessive portions to your personality, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
You're not going to pull it off.
And they pay for it, right? You know, relationships and you know, regular life. You know, I mean, everybody kind of hates the word normal, but normal people just don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, and for a long time, especially during like that time you were talking about where I was competing and stuff like that, like I didn't care if they didn't get it.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of looked at them like cattle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just like something in my way.
Right.
You know, like you're holding up traffic, bro.
Yeah.
You know, you know, like
Yeah.
you just don't get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're on the machine that I need.
Right.
You know, and you don't understand the urgency right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's necessary to a degree. You know, to achieve anything, I think you have to have some of that. But I also understand it makes it hard. You know, for family and friends and stuff that aren't there, or whatever they're for them, it's difficult.
Yeah.
You know, so it does create some challenges. You know, you know, like I mean, for years, man. I mean, you know, I got my first divorce went down and all that, and you know, like dating or whatever you're gonna call it, you know, and man, between having kids and then this stuff, yeah, man, I just, you know, it just people. It sounds terrible to say, but people to some degree were kind of disposable.
Yeah.
You know, not people in my jiu-jitsu world were like you, like all the guys, they're here, they're never going anywhere.
Right.
Like they're my boys, you know, and it's like we're down. But people outside of that world, to me, were kind of like take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this is what I do, and if you don't do it, then I guess you just don't get it. You know, and you're not going to get it until you do get it. You know, and so that was kind of my thing, and so yeah, that makes it difficult to.
And I think I've seen an evolution. We're definitely gonna try to get Matt on.
Yeah.
And I believe, and I think one thing that I will try to get clear from him, because I think he'll have some clearance. And if we had, you know, I don't want to take up your entire day, but I would definitely talk with you about some of your. We'll probably come up and do another episode with you, of course.
That'd be cool.
But there's been some change to that, because that time frame that you're talking about, there is. Hostility may not be the exact word, but that environment is not super welcoming to the broader public.
No, not at all.
And there has been some growth, and honestly, I think Matt's the best at a lot of things, but one of the things that I think he's the best at in the world right now is having an organization that meets a various set of needs on a continuum. And so still having that performance counts mentality, keeping that high up there on the
that's
hierarchy.
That's gotta be the prime directive.
You gotta have to have that, yeah.
Those Star Trek reference.
Yeah. But
always a nerd. Yeah, I can't help it.
but how can you simultaneously have an environment that isn't stiff arming?
And they've done a really
to mix that is really tough to
do.
do. But that was a crux that all MMA, jiu-jitsu type gyms
I still
really had to
struggle
deal
with.
with.
I still struggle with it to some degree. I still struggle with it because that beast never goes away. You know, that beast is always in all of us. You know, we always are. And it's evolutionary. You know, it's just in us. It's DNA. We always will compete for resources.
And if you have a segment of your team that's those types, you know,
but
you're trying to have another segment where you're not wanting people to come in and go, oh my God.
Yeah, you got to keep them totally
How
separate.
do you do both?
You got to keep them separate. But there's been a growth and an evolution. I remember, and it's funny now because my brother's actually more hardwired than I am towards competition. He still competes in Highland Games and strongman and stuff. And he is still wired very much hyper competitive. You know, he's just, you know, like if there's two raindrops, you know, running down a window pane, they're racing. Which one you got? You know, like, you know, it's just, that's how he is, you know. He's like, my raindrop's gonna beat yours.
He doesn't live close to Vegas, does he?
No, thank God, yeah. But you know, but looking back in past times, we would have people come into the gym, and almost my first question would be, are you looking to compete?
Yes.
You know, and if their answer was anything but yes, I was uninterested. You know, because to me the answer is yes or no, and if you don't say yes immediately, then it's no, and that bit of mental wavering on your part, I don't want to deal with later, because I know it's going to come out later when things get tough. You know, so I would immediately, I would turn around and walk away. I would turn around and walk off, just leave them stand there, because you're just not there, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and whereas my brother would always, like, he would try to make a beeline when we hear the door open. He would make a beeline for the door to get there before me, because he knew, you know, like, we need people to sign up, we need people to join, we need people to be part of this. And he would very much try to meet them where they are, and eventually get them to wherever, you know, they might want to go. And I was very much like, if you don't walk in here like right now ready to just get it, like if you,
I don't know how to work with you.
I don't really want to waste my time, you know. And that's and in hindsight, and I've talked about this with Matt. In hindsight, that's a pretty heavy mental debt, you know, to walk around thinking about, because how many of those people needed jiu-jitsu more than anything? You know, how many of them came in fear-based and got exactly what they were afraid of?
Right.
The jock.
Because how many people, I mean, we hear this all the time, where I train, people will come in and they'll say, I've been meaning to come for a couple years, and I finally got up
the
guts to do it. You know? And so that initial interaction is crucial for that, you know.
And that's the thing, and I just think back on it now, and I'm like, man, I wish I had, you know, that list of people to call and just go, hey, look, like, you know, I apologize, you know, because they encountered exactly what they were afraid of.
Yeah.
They encountered that version of me that was just, all I wanted to do was compete or help people compete, get people ready to compete. You know, I just want to be in that room, in that environment. And, you know, and they were probably afraid of that. Maybe they got picked on by jocks or whatever it might have been, you know, and bullied or whatever. And rather than come in and have the opportunity to face those fears or those demons and conquer them, they ran into just a dick, you know. And so, yeah, I feel bad about a lot of that time period as far as that kind of stuff goes.
How did you progress out of that, or did you just like wake up to, I need to
having an aneurysm?
Really?
Yeah, 2014, my brain blew up, and that was my wake up call. Because even I had surgery on my legs, my kneecap had to be put back together, you know, from a SWAT thing.
You changed a lot of stuff after the aneurysm.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. Because for the first time in my life, even I had, so I herniated S1, L5, L4, L3 discs in my lower back.
Wow.
Lost my toenails on my right side, all kinds of bad stuff was happening, and I still trained. I had pancreatitis, got out of the hospital, was on the mat like a day later after being in the hospital. Numerous things like that had happened. And so that developed in me a lot of arrogance and intolerance. I very much looked at people like, you know, you just don't want it, you know, was my mental attitude, you know. And so, you know, I would click with guys like Jahai, you know, I'd click with guys that train with me, you know, because they were kind of in my same mental place, you know, like you're driving halfway across the country to train, you know, and same thing with me. I'm driving all over the place to train with people that are gonna like push me, you know, and so everywhere in my world was those people, you know, and I'm competing in strongman and I'm doing all this stuff, and then my brain blows, and I'm running a competition team, you know, for my judo coach. I'm running the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mixed martial arts competition, and some of the judo competition team practices. I'm running those for him. So my whole world is just competitors, and in the SWAT world, it's very much, if you don't want to be here, leave. Like there's 35, 40 other dudes want your spot. Like we're not begging you to stay, you know. And so that was very much my mental place, you know, I was very much used to being in a spot where, okay, he looks like he's getting a little chunky, you know, it looks like he's putting some weight on, I guess he doesn't want to be here anymore, because physical's coming. Or we'll just audit him now, you know, and see where he's at. If he doesn't pass the physical, got 30 days, there's other dudes waiting for your spot, dude. Just don't mess up your gear too bad.
If you're gonna run in a room with a guy,
yeah,
you don't want the guy who's slacking.
Right. Yeah, it's very much a self-selecting process. And so my whole world was that, you know. Same with competition. Like, if you know you got a fight coming up, what are you doing, bro? I shouldn't have to come wake you up, you know. So that's the thing. So I had my aneurysm, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't just do it. I couldn't just get out of it. Like, I very much think the reason I did not die is because of all this stuff. Because the right side of my body was shut off, but it was on the left side of my brain, so it was like both sides got jacked. So, you know, they should have killed me. Doctors told me that. The doctors were
Did it burst or just?
Yeah, so it was right down here.
Wow.
So, but it went down my spine. So instead of going up onto my brain, it went down my spine. So it created incredible pain. Because all the nerve endings, so my spinal cord filled with blood. So all the nerves just
Had pressure.
oh man, it was so bad.
Yes.
When they did the epidural, the spinal tap, to drain and see where the you know, and so all 4 vials were full of blood. They're like, yeah, we figured it, we found it, you know, we got where it's going. But when they did that, it felt so good. Like, no, but I've never heard anybody say that a spinal tap felt good, but it felt so good because it took all that pressure off. Because I was on fire, like my whole body just like, I was so irritated, but I couldn't do anything, you know. But coming out of that, I had to deal with a few things. You know, opiates kicked my ass. You know, I had no idea that was going to happen because they don't tell you. You know, they're it's not malicious on their part, right? They're just trying to help you. Like, they're trying to keep the pain under control so that you can recover. Get your brain, because I had intracranial swelling, so they're trying to get the brain to reduce in size so they don't have to cut a chunk of my head out. And there's all these things happening, all these moving parts, and it's all pain and misery, you know. And but I remember, man, I would sit on the couch and I'm like, all right, you know, it's like 9 in the morning, you know, I wake up, I come downstairs, and because I was off work for like 3 months. I was supposed to be off work for a year, but I managed to go back in 3 months. And so if I went back at all, they were going to pension me out because they thought I was done. I couldn't see out of my left eye for a while, and I couldn't use my right hand and all that. So I'm sitting on this couch, and I'm like, man, I'm like, here's what's up. I'm gonna chill here for a second, drink some coffee, and then I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna get on the treadmill, and I'm gonna run or walk for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna do that twice a day until I get myself back into condition. And then next thing I know, my wife she's working in the 911 center. She's a communications operator and 911 dispatcher. So she would go to work at 10 o'clock. Her shift would start at 10:30. And so, mind you now, 9 o'clock in the morning, I had plans. It's like 10 o'clock at night. She's bumping my shoulder. I'm still in the same spot. I haven't moved. And she's like, hey, go upstairs and go to bed. I'm like, where'd the day go? But the opiates and all that, I was taking 18 medications, preventative medications, and then 4 in case of emergency break the glass medications. And so, for the first time in my life, I had no say over what my body did. And so for the first time in my life, I knew what it was like to be these people that would come in and be like, oh man, I really want to work out, but, like they're winded walking from their car to the front desk of the gym. Or, you know what I mean? Like, to me, somebody saying, or like doing like technical stand-ups as part of the warm-up. People saying, oh, I can't do that. Is there another way to do this? Because I can't do this. And I'm like, do it. What's she talking about? You know what I mean? But for the first time in my life, I can't manage to get up and down stairs on my own for a couple weeks. And then after a couple weeks of that, then I'm able to get up and down stairs, but it's one step at a time. You know what I mean? Like step on a step, both feet on a step on the next step, that kind of thing, to get up and down without falling. And going down is actually more challenging than going up. But because there's always that little bit of doubt, like, am I going to stop? Are my legs going to hold me this time? The braking system
working against you.
The brakes here. We got some brakes or no? But yeah, man, that was the first time in my life where, all of a sudden I knew what the other side felt like. I never felt that before, ever. Because I always had the ability, and my wife will talk about it, and my friends too, people in my world will talk about how, like, I can just, like, I can eat a terrible diet and still go out and run like a 7-minute mile. And I did like, I've done the 666 before, like right before my aneurysm, 2013, I did the 666, which is a 600-pound squat, 600-pound deadlift, and a 6-minute mile. Actually, it was 638, so technically not 6, but
6 something.
It's in the 6s. And you do that all in 15 minutes. You have a 15-minute window to do that. So I've done that kind of stuff. I did that without doing anything. Like, I just was like, I came into the gym and where I was training at the time, and they're like, hey man, we're doing 666 today. I'm like, you are, and this, and then just shit talking starts. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll do it. And I did it in like Converse All Stars, because that's what I wore to deadlift that day. And so I ran the mile and like, so not to brag, but just to say, like, that was my baseline.
You're used to being that guy.
I'm used to be able to just pull that off. And then to go from that to walking up the stairs was at times very daunting. Like, I would look at the stairs and go, I don't know, man, I'm just gonna sleep on the couch. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Or I remember like doing the mental math of walking to the kitchen. Like, man, I don't know. I mean, I can get there. I don't know if I can get back. And so for me, that forced, like, much of evolution is forced, right? The adaptation, that forced that growth, where I suddenly had to realize this is what the other side's been talking about all these years. And I was just too much of a prick to see it, and because I'd never been there, I'd never felt it. I never knew what it was like to not be in some sort of shape, or conditioning, or have that well of work capacity, to tap into. Because even if, they would put me on stress tests at the neurologist, the neurosurgeon's office. I'd have to go in every 3 weeks for checkups, and they'd do stress tests on me, and they'd always have to do the extended protocol, the 22-minute protocol, and all that good stuff, and I'd always ace it, and so I still had the ability to suck it up and drive on, but then I'd go home and go to sleep for like 6 hours. I'd be wiped out from walking on a treadmill for 22 minutes. And so for the first time in my life, I'm like, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
This is what people have been saying to me all these years.
Right.
You know, and I just was too much of a dick to see it or hear it, you know, and I was just too intolerant, too arrogant, caught up in myself, and, you know, like, well, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Which is very much true, but you gotta get them there.
Right.
You know, you gotta get them there first, you know, and running them off and, you know, being intolerant and condescending and all those things, never gonna get them there.
Right.
Never gonna get them there.
Right.
So then once I realized what that felt like, what that was like, that completely changed. Because coming back to rolling was like hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you take off? Did you say 8 months or?
No. I was off for, so November 9th is when it happened, and then February I went back to training. Yeah, like middle of February I started training again.
What did your doctors think of that?
Not a fan. Not a
Yeah.
fan. Not a fan at all.
The doctors are never.
Yeah, they're not a fan of that at all. They pretty much were like, you're never gonna do jiu-jitsu again.
Yeah.
Never gonna get hit in the head again. Don't get hit in the head ever again for any reason if you can help it. So no kickboxing, MMA, boxing. I love boxing, man.
No having fun, no smiling.
Basically, yeah. Don't move your head too fast. Be careful of flashing lights. So that was my job, you know. So that might be out the window. There was so much, man. So much to deal with all at once, you know. So I came back, but I remember I was rolling with Larry Lindemann. We were at the Rangemaster conference down in Memphis, and I was teaching actually down there. I was teaching knife stuff, and I remember I was struggling a little bit, and then we went to the hotel and rolled. You know, like got a room and like not a room, but like one of their board rooms. Yeah. So like, hey man, let's go in here and push the equipment, furniture out, and we'll just roll. It was like 4 of us, you know, Cecil Birch and Chris Fry and myself. And Larry, and we're rolling with Larry, and he's got a killer spider guard game, you know, and I remember seeing the opportunity to pass, to go shin to hamstring, you know, cross step, you know, shin to hamstring, to kind of set up that shift, and I remember him looking at me, and he's like, and I just was like, and then I got swept or whatever, and then we were talking about it, and I'm like, I see it, my body won't move.
Yeah.
My brain's saying, but my body is like a half a step behind. And he's like, I could feel it.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I could feel it. He goes, like, I could see, like, you see the opening, you see the opportunity. He goes, I could feel you load up, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being read-react.
Right.
You know, it was just read. And, you know, and then by the time you react, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was difficult. You know, because I'd never had that issue either.
Right.
I'd always just kind of had like this aptitude for grappling.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was a lot of challenges, man. But that was for me. That was the pivotal moment for me. I think was that going through all that, coming out of that, and I felt like I talked and talk about it a lot, but it was pretty pivotal.
Sure.
You know. In that it changed that for me. You know, now, you know, people come in, even in my shooting classes, I have had to come up with ways for people to get up and down and things like that.
Well, you don't realize what, like, you know, I mean, I was just talking, I think even the day before we came up here, with a lady at my wife's work whose husband's been doing jiu-jitsu, and he's been asking her to come in, and they live in a different town. He's not training with me. He's saying he may come up and visit me. That's what he was talking to me about. And she was mentioning being afraid of it, or having some, you know, anxieties about if she participated. And we got around to talking about different positions and how, you know, early on you happen to learn to survive and those sorts of things. And I was like, even just guys who think they're tough guys, right, don't realize what Neon Belly's going to do to them the first time they feel that, right?
Yeah.
And they panic.
No idea.
Like, they think they're a tough guy, and then all of a sudden,
can't breathe. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just something they've never, and they also don't realize that their number one reflex is going to set them up for an immediate armbar. Like, so about 3 seconds later,
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah.
be like, ah!
Yeah, what just happened? Yeah.
So even their first reflex is going to be bad.
Yeah.
But they also don't realize that, and I've done this with newer people, even somebody who has 50 pounds on me, before, where I'm like, stand up and put your knee on my belly. And see how I'm talking you through the move?
Yeah.
And part of that's because you don't know how to properly do it.
Right.
But part of it's because I've been conditioned to this.
Yeah,
you know,
you're just used to
I
it.
can take a purple belt's knee on belly for a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
for long enough to move my hips and try to escape,
Right.
start looking for the right way out.
Yeah.
Because you can live through this. It's possible. It just doesn't feel like it right now. So you gotta learn step by step, you gotta learn a little bit, what is this thing that you're fearing?
Yeah.
And what can you do? What's the little bitty things? Like, everyone here is the ones who can show you that.
Right.
Like mount. Matter of fact, I remember suffocating under your mount one time when we were rolling, and just with, you can just be suffocated from mount.
Yeah.
Without getting
Sure.
hit with a sub. But you learn over time.
Yeah.
You should
You learn to find your space in there.
find your place to where it's really hard. Like, by the time you get to, I'm probably less athletic than I was at blue belt, but like, you should just get to where it's, even a good guy has to cook you to get you to give up something, because just being uncomfortable,
Not enough.
you ain't gonna make,
Not enough.
that's not enough.
That's our new normal.
Yeah, you're not
that's
gonna
the
make me
thing.
give you something just by it being uncomfortable. You actually have to get a leverage advantage to make me give up something that I'm not supposed to give up. The discomfort is just part of it. It's just there.
It's every day now.
It's ubiquitous.
Yeah,
It's
it's
always
every day,
there.
man. I'm living with this.
Yeah, if you think
I
it's
dig
ever
it.
gonna not be uncomfortable, you're
Yeah.
just wrong.
I dig it, man. I dig it.
Yeah.
Especially if somebody makes me uncomfortable, or they put me in a bad spot, like, I'm digging it, because I'm like, oh yeah, this is new.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool.
It's like when you were
Let's see
talking
where we
earlier
go,
about, like,
you know?
some of my favorite roles. So me and Aaron, the guy that runs the place where I coach, he's about, when he works real hard to get thin, he'll get under 230. When he's lifting heavy and stuff, he's 260.
Right.
Now, he doesn't, when we would do these long rolls, of course he wasn't going as hard as he could, but he would push me up to the limit. And then let me off just a little bit, then push me up to the limit, then let me off. And we did these things called deep water rolls, is what we call it. And what that meant was basically, so when you roll on a round, that's one sort of gassed, right? Of course you can get gassed in 2 minutes if you want. And you can get gassed in 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. But when you start stretching that out and say, we're gonna roll, and we started with like 20 minutes, and just say, no matter how many taps, no matter how much tired, you don't get to stop for 20 minutes. Then we were like, what if we just doubled this? Like, just keep moving for 40. Then we were like, what about 50? What about and by the end of it, we would be doing like an hour and 10 minutes, where we would just say, for the next hour and 10 minutes, we're just gonna roll, no matter what happens. I mean, you can tap, you might get tapped, who knows how many times, totally lose count. But it's called deep water because what can you do in deep water? You can't put your feet down. You can't, you're never done. The bell doesn't ring. So in deep water, you swim a little differently than you do in shallow water, right? You have to tread water, you have to back float, you have to try different things to survive. Because it's deep water. The clock is not, you can't be looking over there like, oh, 45 seconds left, I can just hold out for 45 seconds. Stop watching the clock and just roll. And man, he would just wring me out in those rolls. And that was some of my favorite
takes you to a different place, right? It takes you to a different place.
You learn invisible things that, I mean, everyone uses that word a lot, but like, you learn things that you cannot learn without just doing that.
You go to different places. You go to a place where Ken Wilber talks about the integrative philosophy and all that, and he talks about it was one of his lectures, and he's talking about Buddhism and flow and center and all these different terms for what we're looking for, and he said one time, you're never more in the moment, never more present than when you're about to be stuck under a bar. He's talking about lifting weights, and he's talking about how, the best practice for this person, this Buddhist or whatever it is that you want to call yourself, the best practice, the best way to find that still point is to put yourself under that bar,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And for me, those moments are the ones where I find
Absolutely.
that place where it's just flow.
Yep.
Like it's not, it might not be flow. People think flow is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
It might be a quarter inch at a time.
yeah, it
Mhm.
might be
But in
the
here-
most miserable,
Yep.
you know, yeah. But I am completely in that
That's
moment.
right.
You know, like there's nothing else existing, and you lose track of time, and you don't even know what's going on around you or who's around you. It's just this relationship, you're like a 360 zero gravity relationship with this person you're rolling with,
Mhm.
where you don't even know what's up and down anymore. You're just working,
Mhm.
and yeah, man, it's fun to go have those roles where you just go beyond what you think you can,
Yeah.
just to see if you can,
Right.
you know. And I think there's a lot of value in that too, because it pushes back that threshold, you know, that central governor that's always in our brain saying, hey, ho, 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 you know, like, let's keep something in reserve, because, you know, we never know,
Right.
you know. And so being able to just push that governor back and reset it, you know, and